moving on to the reason you are here is our friend Nate heard a little rumor. I'm sure maybe a few other people, there's like a handful of other people on the internet who maybe have heard this rumor, but we've got the man himself with all the research. You've already seen the 38 tabs he has open, and if you haven't seen it because you're listening on the podcast, then go find it on YouTube at Smoke Break Sports. Forgive my plug. Nate, tell him what you've found.
So, what I found in the past couple of days, an article from the Houston Chronicle came out. There was a rumor that Texas and Oklahoma were going to be moving from the Big 12 to the SEC, and this had been in the process for a long time. So when that came out a couple of days ago from the Houston Chronicle, it's just exploded at this point. There's just a lot of wild accusations and rumors and stuff going around. However, there is a lot of smoke to the main portion of the rumor of Texas and Oklahoma moving on to the SEC and making a super conference. So obviously I had a lot of tabs up here, and I'm gonna pull these bad boys up. But at this point, it's gotten to where this is a state senator from the state of Texas. He, along with some members of the House in Texas, so not our general Congress, their legislator in Texas, they're trying to file bills, which honestly, in my opinion, don't really have any teeth. And it would take a long explanation, but Texas also has a weird legislative process. So by the time this stuff, in my opinion, would go through, Texas and Oklahoma would probably already be gone. Not that this stuff would affect Oklahoma, but
right.
That they're trying to get legislative approval before Texas could move. I need to find, we won't do that one. So this one I found recently, and I'm not surprised. So, supposedly they're going to be offering invitations as soon as next week to Texas and Oklahoma. And as you can tell on here, the vote is 13-1.
Put your votes in now for who you think the one is.
If you can't, I'll be honest with you, if you can't guess the one, then you obviously haven't been paying attention for the past 30 years.
Which is his way of getting in a dig at me, because I picked Alabama in my first go-around because I thought maybe that they might secretly be afraid of a little competition out in them Bama streets. So, but I'll leave it to you to go find who the real one was, or Nate can tell you.
So with that being said, I mean, this looks pretty imminent. And just to give, some more background information, supposedly some of the other schools, such as Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, I believe TCU, have contacted the Pac-12 about either getting in there or the rest of the Big 12 schools getting, I guess, I don't know. I'm forgetting the word. For some reason, I want to say dissolved. Yes, there we go. I don't know why I forgot that. Absorbed into the Pac-12. There have been some statements from the Oklahoma State, I believe, president. They said, and I quote, they're disappointed basically at Oklahoma for lack of transparency and engagement in terms of the decision making that they have been doing. Baylor has also made a statement that they're concerned about the matters at hand, and that they're going to do everything they can to ensure Baylor has a place in the new, I'm just going to say new world at this point, with all the NIL stuff going around and sponsorship and stuff, which, mind you, very supportive of, because as much of a multi-billion dollar industry college football is, these players need to be getting a piece of the pie. And you know what? Fine. Schools don't want to pay them. at least let them make money off of their own, accomplishments of their own name.
Agreed.
This is a part of the way that all this stuff has come about at this point. There's also rumors around concerning Iowa State and Kansas. That Kansas is going to be sucked up by the Big Ten. Iowa State may get sucked up by the Big Ten. I've even seen things that West Virginia would maybe end up in the ACC, which, academic-wise, that they don't necessarily fit, but culturally, I mean, come on now, they fit. Their biggest rival is there. Two of their three biggest rivals are there at Virginia Tech and Pitt. So all this information that's come out, I mean, this is just bombshell after bombshell in the past 3 or 4 days. There have also been articles that have come out, such as, or not articles, but just information from sources that have come out. And I'll share the screen here just so our viewers can get an idea. Kirk Bowles, which I've never heard of him before, but he's a sports columnist. You guys can read this information here for the Austin American-Statesman newspaper.
I love how his wife was third. Sorry for the non sequitur, but he says, I love 60s music, the Yankees, and my wife in that order. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, one not daughter-in-law, but D-in-law and one cute grandson. But I mean, suppose he's got information from, I assume, his sources that this has been worked on for 6 months, and that Texas A&M leadership has not been notified. But then I also saw stuff that supposedly they have been involved in one way or another, talking about Iowa State possibly in talks. So, this is just all this, and then West Virginia's Attorney General threatening to sue, which would have no teeth in any form or fashion whatsoever.
Those are the ones that crack me up. Like, you started this by talking about potential legislation and then lawsuits, and it makes me think about the time when the federal government investigated baseball players, whether or not they're using steroids. Like, what? There seems to be a bit of an overlap here. Is this really what our legal system is meant for? You're going to sue a school for leaving? I mean, I'm sure there are potential loopholes or something to clamp onto and say, for this reason you were dishonest, or it says per your agreement to be in this conference, that I'm sure there's an argument to be made for said lawsuit. But I just mean, come on, man. Like, why should a college halfway across the country be beholden to you because you guys are in the same conference? You haven't even been in that same conference together for very long. So maybe that's West Virginia's position. Like, hey, we just got here and you're dicking us over, because historically speaking, they haven't been in that conference for that long. I
think 2013, 2012, something like that. I'm trying to find, because I wanted, in some further discussion that we're about to get into, I wanted to pull up, and I can't believe I didn't have it. Okay, here we go. I found it. So just to dive in before I give my opinion, on the matters at hand here. So there was also this tweet that came out, and this was on at the SEC network. Basically, at this point, I think this goes for everyone. If you go to a 16 or, a further amount of teams in a conference, you're going to have to go to pods instead of doing divisions. So this is what they had on SEC network within the past day or two in terms of pods. And, just for the people who are not going to be, watching this on YouTube, basically they have 4 pods, theoretical pods in this theoretical SEC conference of 16. One pod would be Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina. Another one, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. Another one, LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. And another one, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas. You basically play everybody in your pod, and then 2 games apiece in the other pod. So for a 9-game conference. And the understanding of doing this would be so everybody at least hosts everybody else in the conference if you're at 16 teams once in every 4 seasons.
Okay.
My opinion just on this specific matter is I feel like they would probably boot Missouri or boot Arkansas and stick Texas A&M in this pod. Just because these 3 teams, I guarantee you, would play every year if this actually goes through, because there's a lot of smoke in these rumors, but at this point, there's nothing confirmed. So, in my opinion, these 3 teams would always play every year, no matter what.
This
But
retroactively kind of fixes the Missouri addition to the SEC now. It's like it
which
makes a lot more sense now geographically, which just kind of like you mentioned with West Virginia being in the ACC, some of this stuff might line up okay. But go ahead.
in my opinion, I'll just dive right into my opinion on everything. So I'm not a big fan of any of this. I'm not dumb. This is all going to happen just because at this point you're going to get 50 to 64 teams, and then the division is going to split. Basically haves and have-nots. So you're going to have the top echelon of teams be in their own division, in my opinion. But I don't like this for one reason, just because at this point, I'm very pro college football players making money off their own name, but this is just going to destroy basically what college football has been about for 100 plus years. I mean, to me, I'm an IU fan and a Boise State fan, so a national title has never really been a relevant thing for me.
What?
So all rivalries to me, like, there's still rivalries in the NFL and baseball, but other than a few in the NFL, such as Bears, Packers, Cowboys, Redskins,
All of the AFC North.
AFC West too, really. They're not really a thing. And in baseball, you got a couple that are like big rivalries: Dodgers, Giants, Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, Cardinals. But I mean, they don't really move. Exactly. They don't really move the needle. But college football is, it's based on hate and pettiness. I mean,
yes.
For me, like even Kentucky football, like, I don't like basketball really, but Kentucky still for me, Purdue, the schools like that. I mean, that's really what moves the needle, and this is in the same time fixing it, but it's also just pretty much destroying everything that really is what great about it. Like, honestly, college football has gone downhill since the implementation of a playoff, because at this point they're just going to be moving the needle to limit more chances for people that are not historically or a big powerhouse team now. But getting that out of the way, my opinion of what's going to happen is these 2 schools are going to move. I think the Big Ten is going to take Kansas, which there's a lot of smoke to that rumor, based on their basketball, which I think their football can eventually improve. They're hurting, and a lot of it goes back to like Charlie Weiss and dealing with Derek Betty, and they have the issues with
Hey,
Les Miles.
I know how it feels to get snake bit by Charlie Weiss. Don't have to tell me, but listeners, you might not know, and it's quite a hole you have to climb out of. But sorry, continue.
I think Iowa State's probably going to end up in the Big Ten as well. But one thing I want to throw out there is I think Missouri would be better off to jump ship to the Big Ten, in my opinion. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think they would fit there better. They would make more money. I don't have the numbers offhand, but the last time I saw, the Big Ten makes more money per school. And it's not just football, but it's everything encompassing as well. Because there's more Big Ten alums overall than SEC alums. So I think that would be my hope, but I think it's going to end up being Iowa State and Kansas, which would be two good, in my opinion, two good fits for the conference. Um, but I think at this point, it's probably going to end up being you're going to end up with two giant conferences, and probably the Pac-12 and the ACC are going to be probably non-existent in 10 to 15 years. Personally,
They'll probably move to adapt or absorb some, like what's out there, the WAC, the Pac-10 or the Pac-12 already
Mountain
absorbed
West.
all of that. The Mountain, yeah, the Mountain West. Sorry. Um,
Hey, you know what though? The WAC is coming back now. They're going to be FCS level, but they added a bunch of teams, and
Heck yeah.
I'll pull it up here.
But while you're pulling that up, I mean, I do, I tend to agree with you that it's slowly, it's going to break down. You know, the more and more conferences, they get stronger, and then you're going to have this big disparity. There's going to be, you know, I think it's still going to stay four conferences. I believe that the other two will just kind of have to fight for scraps. But it's sad to see. And what I hope, and you had mentioned something about this, made this got me thinking about basketball. So the Big East, when it blew itself up, I mean, it was still a basketball, or yeah, sorry, it's still a basketball conference there briefly. So I'm hoping that maybe as far as basketball goes, we'll get to keep these because you said Kansas in the Big Ten, and for basketball, that's pretty cool. But I just can't imagine. And there's so many more basketball schools, is what I'm saying. It'd be a lot. You only need 12 kids to field a team, so there are way more Division One basketball programs, and it's way easier to withhold your existence. So hopefully we won't lose Big 12 basketball. Anyway, I'm sure you have found what you were looking for and can pull it up now. Forgive my
Yeah,
tangent.
so not to like go off like completely off topic, but yeah, the WAC is going to come back. They absorbed Abilene Christian, um, Sam Houston State, Stephen A. Austin. I'm forgetting. Oh, Lamar University. So a bunch of Texas schools. That could be a whole discussion in itself. Like some of these lower conferences that are like falling apart too. But they're going FCS football. I think coming up here shortly. So they're making like a comeback in a sense. They also added, well, now they're going to be called Utah Tech University or Utah Tech State or something. But they're currently called Dixie State. It's a school out of Utah, but they're changing their name, because of the Confederate connotations with the name Dixie right there, which is funny considering they're a school from Utah.
And considering that Dixie isn't even a state, but that is a weird name for you. I thought of this very same thing. It's like that's out of place in Utah. Probably has a different meaning out there. It's probably because of some old 1870 bar owner named Dixie, and she was the toughest gal in the Old West. And now her memory is completely tarnished. So thanks, Obama. Um, so now that the Whack Attack is back, which does make me happy, I will celebrate with a round of NCAA 2014 sometime soon. I'm looking at this, and all I can think of is, okay, now we have to fantasy draft the rest of the Big 12. Where do we think that everybody's going to land? Because I agree with you that they're going to go, that it's going to happen. I don't think it could have. I don't think it could have gotten this far as getting out like this, and you've shown evidence of people been talking about it for 6 months, and I don't know. It seems like a pretty substantial rumor that's going to be true. So, is there any chance? Is there anything the Big 12 could do to pull a Barry Gibb and stay alive before we fantasy book? Because I do want to do that. I do want to see where everyone might go. But are there a few people they could grab? They only had 10 teams. I mean, they haven't been big or 12 for a little while now. So could they find two teams? Do you have any candidates that you would fill those spots with?
I mean, so let's say theoretically the conference is going to survive. Um, what I would do, or what I think they would do, I think they would grab 4 schools, bump up to 12. I think they would grab BYU.
It's a good one.
I mean, that would be a difficult thing to work around the no games on Sundays, um, which, you know, I think we're going, BYU likes being an independent in football and they have a good home for the rest of their sports because the West Coast Conference is a great fit for them. I believe all the schools there are private, and I think only one of them doesn't really have a religious affiliation at this point anymore. But they're all small private schools. I would think BYU might be the biggest one in that conference, but they all fit together real well. I think they like that, but if they want to have a chance in regards to football moving on, they probably need to get over the no Sundays sort of playing thing. But I think the Big 12 would add BYU, probably Houston. I think they would try to go for one of the Florida, lower Florida schools, like UCF or South Florida, probably UCF, honestly, because I think UCF has one of the top 5 student enrollments in the country. I think them and like Ohio State and I honestly I don't know, and I don't really care to look up, but I'm pretty sure they're in one of the top 5 student enrollments. And then they would maybe, I'd like to see them pick up Boise, but I don't know how well that would go over because Boise State's probably had enough of the Mountain West personally.
I have been personally wanting to see Boise State. Now, previously, it had been my desire to see them in the Pac-12, but I guess it makes a lot more sense for them to be in the Big 12.
Well, the Pac-12 would never take them is the thing because of academics, among other things. Their non-football schools or football sports would probably, they'd be okay in some regards, but the Pac-12 is never going to take them. But yeah, that's, I think, if the Big 12 were to stick around, that's what would happen to try and keep them, together.
And you really listed off what I would refer to as the usual suspects. There really aren't that many teams left that are valuable that aren't already in a major conference in a major spot. So the 2 Floridas, those are always one. And yeah, Boise and Houston was the one that surprised me. I kind of forgot about them. But yeah, that's a decent enough program and a pretty good basketball school. And that's the other thing that I always forget that you're on top of, that these conference moves do mean more than just football. Sometimes I look at it strictly like the Boise State thing. Oh yeah, they have a basketball team. So yeah, that would be the best of a bad situation. So, but if you, assuming this happens, would you rather see the Big 12 grab some table scraps, or would you rather it be disbanded and have one fewer power conference?
I think for them to, I mean, I'd like a lot of changes that have happened since like the 1990s to go back, but I think it would be better if it just got swallowed up by the other 3 various power conferences, and they move to non-existence basically.
It'll come back in 20 years. I mean, it'll be a nostalgia play.
Well, if they wanted a nostalgia play, they would have brought back the Southwest Conference, but that wasn't going to happen.
We're getting our Big East reunion soon. I can feel it. It's just going to be probably FCS as well.
I mean, with the current incarnation of the Big East, I mean, they're never going to have football, like ever.
Not with that attitude.
Well, I mean, you got UConn that plays football. I mean, I say play
They put
very
pads
hesitantly. very hesitantly. I mean, Villanova's got football, but it's lower level. Georgetown's got non-scholarship football, I believe. Um, Butler's got non-scholarship football. I mean, Butler's a Division I football team, but they play Division III and NAIA schools, if that gives you any indication of of the strength of
Why
of
doesn't
their
everybody
football.
just do that? How do they pull that
Um,
one off?
I mean, well, it's non-scholarship football in the Pioneer League. Um, so you got schools like Butler, um, Drake, which is in Iowa. San Diego, weirdly enough, is in this conference. Jacksonville, before they got rid of their football program, was in this conference. I think Stetson used to be in the conference. Dayton plays in this conference. Davidson plays in this conference for football. Um, Marist, which I think is out of New York, plays in this conference, but none of them have scholar. They also just picked up a school from Division III that got kicked out of their own conference because they were like spent way too much money on athletics and were like too good or whatever. In St. Thomas, but yeah, no, I mean,
That's
but
the
Butler,
NCAA for you.
right? Butler football is Division I FCS, but they play a Division III school in DePaul, not DePaul, but DePaul.
With a W.
Uh, Yep. And then they play Taylor, which is a Christian school in NAIA. So, you know, I don't really know where I'm going with that, but I just decided to go off on that tangent. But anyway,
Hey, it
moving.
was well worth it. It's gonna be its own clip for the clip show.
Um,
Every day's a school day.
right. So, but what I think is going to happen is you're going to have, like I said earlier, Iowa State and Kansas get sucked up by the Big Ten. I think the Pac-12, while they say they're not looking at adding schools, I think they're going to end up taking probably at least two of that of the rest of the schools. I mean, Kansas State's out of the question. Um, well, there are private schools in the Pac-12. None of them are like religious based. So I think that eliminates Baylor. TCU is an interesting one because they're pretty. I mean, Texas Christian University, but my understanding is they're all but secular, except for in name only. Really, like they don't have the same sort of attachment to whatever church they had that created the school. Like I
That's
believe, but
funny. In the past, I remember. I don't remember how many years ago it was. It was a few, but they had a player get kicked off the team for having sex with his girlfriend or something. But this was
that was BYU.
no. You're probably right.
Brandon Davies.
See, now you see why he is also our former resident NCAA expert. The dude knew about the Pioneer League. F in the chat if you knew about the Pioneer League. Press X to doubt and other memes. Go ahead.
I might have, I might actually go to it because since I don't live too far, I might go to a Butler game or two just for the hell of it.
Yeah, as you should send me some video, and then we'll do our Pioneer League review. I think it's safe to say that none of these Big 12 leftovers will end up in the Pioneer League. I would think, but yeah, you're right. TCU's a tough one. Baylor, another one that's like Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Kind of forgotten about. I don't really know where they would go. I don't think there's room for Kansas State in the Big Ten. And I think you would much rather, right? You'd rather have Kansas. To me, Iowa State is one where I feel like they probably get in mainly just because they would have a natural rivalry with Iowa that's already there. So that, neither team really. Iowa, once every 20 years is super relevant in the Big Ten. And then for the most part, they're kind of mid level. Iowa State's never going to be a threat, in the Big Ten, and in my opinion, football-wise. Maybe could put together a couple of good basketball teams here and there, but I don't know. Kansas State probably, I mean, just where are they going to go to the MAC, the American Conference? Oklahoma State again. If these guys disband, there's going to be a couple of teams where they're just screwed, man. They're not going to be doing anything, which is weird because it's weird that West Virginia is suing because they're totally not going to be one of them. They have enough good programs. Like West Virginia will land on its feet. I feel pretty confident of that.
They'll land. I mean, I don't think the ACC has any leg to stand on when now. I think their academics have gotten better. They added Louisville, which wasn't like necessarily a high academic school.
Yeah, I mean they hired Bobby Petrino twice. You can't be smart around there.
Well, at least the first time was like successful. The second time kind of successful, but then I just think he didn't give a fuck.
I think that's correct. I think there are a lot of former Atlanta Falcon players that would confirm that for you.
And his mistress at Arkansas.
It's funny when you think about that because, I think of Arkansas when I look at the new Big 12, just to talk about Arkansas, because we also talked about Missouri earlier, and you mentioned it would be good for Missouri to potentially move to the Big 10. And I absolutely see that. I think they're a better fit competition-wise. I mean, I don't think Missouri is going to ever get the kind of talent to compete regularly in the SEC, and neither will they in the Big Ten. But there are a couple other stinkers in the Big Ten, like Nebraska, and there are some. Your team Indiana is no longer in there, but for the longest time they were, and I don't know. Maybe Purdue's gonna slide in there, and I don't know. I think Missouri would compete a lot better, but I feel like Arkansas will look like garbage in the new SEC when this happens.
You say that, but at the same time, well, they'll have. They will have recruiting difficulties. Man, I can't talk today. But their schedule will probably get easier. I mean, they're not going to have to play like Auburn and Alabama every single year if this goes through. I mean, would you play right now? Would you play Alabama and Auburn, or would you rather play Texas and Oklahoma?
Yeah, I'd rather play Texas and Oklahoma for sure.
Oklahoma is still, a top program, not quite the Alabama level, but I'd rather play those two schools every year other than Alabama and then Auburn. I mean,
yeah, and it's pretty even because Texas I always view as, recent history they've just been sort of an overrated top 25 team. Like they're going to lose a couple of games, but apparently the talent's there. Or so I'm told, but they just don't win a lot of games. So whereas Auburn, you can usually bank on them too, but they're a much more consistent, much more threatening team. Yeah. So who are we missing? Who else needs to go to another conference that we haven't placed them yet?
Texas Tech might end up Pac-12, although I'm not real sure at that. In my opinion, I think the most screwed schools are Baylor and Kansas State, personally.
I agreed on Kansas State. And you think Baylor, it's because of that religious affiliation? They're not going to have anywhere to go?
Right. Pretty much. I mean, let me look at the list here.
You just start like a Christian League of America, and it'd be Baylor, TCU, BYU, and just
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Yeah, that would be the. That's the conference Notre Dame finally joins. They're like, hell yeah, dude, we'll win this every year. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say hell. And they do a couple of Hail Marys and whatever, and yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just looking at the list here I got pulled up, I mean, I think Baylor and then Kansas State there are the two most screwed. And I think Oklahoma State's going to be kind of sweating it out, but I think they'll end up okay. In
the Mountain West.
I could see them Pac-12, weirdly enough.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody's got to be last.
But no, I in my research and my reading yesterday, and I want to see if I can find it. I'll have to. Um, it was awesome. You know how well, maybe you don't know that Maryland played Texas like 2 games like a couple of years ago, and they beat Texas in both. Um, so I saw a meme, and I'm going to try and find it. But they like when all this stuff came out, one of the accounts like shared a meme. You know that meme where the car is like trying to take the exit off the highway, and you got like
Yeah.
one road going one way there, and then another, the exit there saying something or doing something
Yeah,
else.
yeah. This is gonna be my favorite part for the audio only listeners when they're getting this meme described to them. But yes, I know exactly the one you're talking about. Yeah, it's some people forget about that. I bet Texas fans have forced themselves to forget about it. The Maryland losses. It's been quite the roller coaster down there since old Mac Brown went away. But I'm trying to guess this meme now. I'm guessing it's going to involve Maryland being the car. And they're like, hey, you want to stay in the Big Ten or go to the SEC? It's a pretty bad meme as I'm describing it, but
Oh, okay, here we go.
he finds it. Look at that.
I
Boom and
found.
or shakalaka. So, audio listeners, you're missing out, man. You could be here. You could be here right now on YouTube. There he is. Lose to Maryland in the Big Ten or go to the SEC. Oh, that is beautiful. I am in love with that meme. That's very good. And accurate.
Yeah, because they lost to them both. They lost both games to Maryland, and like I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, but both years like Maryland was under. They were like under 500.
Gross. Those are not the glory days for Texas. So yeah, I feel really bad for Texas fans right now when you think about I, I know there are other teams that are really getting screwed by them leaving, but I am kind of struggling to understand what the big gain is for Oklahoma and especially Texas because as far as competition goes, Texas is in over their head now. And their uphill climb just got way taller. Oklahoma, as you've noted, is often a top five team. But part of me wonders how much does that go away when they're in this conference now? Because I don't think Oklahoma's schedule got easier. I think it got a lot harder. Even now, some years it'll be easy because some years you'll get lucky and have to play Kentucky and Vanderbilt. But there will be years also where you got to play Bama and Auburn. You got to play the yeah, in play Georgia, play LSU, and what is Texas? I mean, and Oklahoma for that matter. What are they going to do against that? Now they don't get. I mean, you look at the Big 12 of recent. There's what maybe 2 or 3 tough games a year, and then you're coasting. So you're getting put in the top 10 in the preseason rankings, and so naturally you're a top 5 team when you win out in the Big 12. Now, as far as competition is concerned, you're just a guy if you're
Right.
Oklahoma, and you're hardly a guy if you're Texas. So I don't know. What do you think? You think these guys made the right move? And what is this a financial thing? I'm assuming is the reason for making this. It's certainly can't be a competitive advantage.
So weirdly enough, like I mean, I think they're doing, at least for themselves, doing the right thing there. Um, there's a couple of pros out of this move. I mean, you at least get a couple of rivalry games back every year, based on what I think they're going to end up doing for the pods. I mean, I think they're going to stick Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas A&M all in the same pod if they go to pods instead of just divisions. you get back to one, really intense rivalry game that hasn't been played in 10 years, and go get Texas and Arkansas. That was not quite to the level of like Texas A&M, and Michigan, Ohio State, those sort of rivalries. But I mean, that was a big rivalry. You get some of those games back now at the expense of a lot of instability for some other schools. If this is your sort of thing, I mean, that's going to be a lot more money for a lot more schools, at least the SEC schools, and the Big Ten's going to react to this and grab some schools, and that's going to create a lot of money for them as well. If one of my hopes happens, that brings back another, that'll bring back another rivalry game with Kansas and Missouri if they both ended up in the Big Ten somehow. And that one is, that is a very intense rivalry, even though both schools aren't like powerhouses in the sense. I mean, that rivalry goes back to pre-Civil War with all the stuff with like slavery and the Kansas-Nebraska Act and things like that. I mean, there was a term, I believe it was, I think it was Bloody Kansas, because a lot of abolitionists and then, pro-slavery people moved into Kansas, tried to vote on their state constitution. Bleeding Kansas is the more correct term. It was, their rivalry is steeped in like way old shit there.
Some old school hate right there. And that would be a good rivalry. I think that would help the Big Ten. Who would replace Missouri in your mind? If Missouri gets booted out of the SEC, who takes their spot?
I don't think they're going to be able to. Personally, I don't think they'll be able to scoop anybody from the ACC for a variety of reasons. I wouldn't be surprised if they took Oklahoma State as well, for no reason other than it just makes sense. If Missouri would to go, I think they would scoop Oklahoma State.
Yeah, to keep that rivalry. I think West Virginia, instead of spending time trying to sue people, maybe should be on the phone with the SEC and going there. I mean, again, I think the ACC is a good landing spot for them for football. Basketball, I think they'd be able to compete if they're not already.
I think they would be the best. If West Virginia ended up there, they would be the second best basketball school in the conference.
Yeah, they would
Like
immediately.
Like how the teams are now. I mean, no, I did see something, and I can't believe I forgot about it. But before I forget, I'm gonna see if I can find it.
It's about West Virginia basketball. Is that what you're pulling up?
No, it wasn't about West Virginia.
Okay.
Oh, where is it?
So yeah, I think they while you're pulling that up, I think West Virginia could, I mean, at least pick up the phone. I think ultimately, I am coming from this. I believe Missouri is going to be there at least when the season starts. I think long term, I would. Now, you're mentioning of the old Texas Arkansas rivalry, which is very true. I mean, going back, I don't know, what would it be, about 50 years or so at least, maybe more, maybe 60, 70. That used to be an old school rivalry when there weren't as many teams in the country playing. And of course, they're neighbors. It's where you get the city Texarkana from. But it's that kind of changed my mind and sold me on, I guess, Arkansas. They're still going to be there. They're going to, they're thanking God that Vanderbilt and Kentucky and Tennessee are still in this division, because if not, they'd be could really be hurting, but they could still win some games against low grade opponents. But I really don't think Missouri fits. I think long term they are going to get replaced by something better because yeah, you could very well be right. 20 years from now, there may only be two conferences. There may just be like eventually one big power conference, and all of a sudden Division One football is only 50 teams, and then now there's a, you know what I mean? Like I could see that too, is just breaking off the top echelon of Division One football, making that the new Division One, and reorganizing everything beneath it. To I don't know. It would cheapen a lot of other people's products, but it could really become like its own little NFL thing. So, did you find what you were looking for?
Man, I don't think so. I mean, it had to do something with um, a bunch of schools. I mean, related to all of this, and for some reason, I'm blanking on it now. I don't know why I didn't think to pull it up. Yeah, now it's gonna bother me. It
Oh,
was
that's all
kind of
right. You can send it to me in a soundbite for our next episode because you know it's we'll have to get back together when this inevitably happens, or if it officially doesn't happen. You know, we gotta bring you on, and you know, we at some point you and I will probably have to get drunk and cry over the 2016 World Series champs we're gonna lose here soon. Um, and think about how if the Cubs had just signed Kyle Schwarber and not traded Yu Darvish, they'd be in first place in the Central right now. But that's, or you know, maybe just re-sign John Lester instead of adding Jake the Snake. But hey, I mean, I'm not going on random tangents. You are.
well. You know, I'm pretty I'm pretty over this year in regards to baseball, but that that's another
How can you
topic
not
for
be?
another time.
Yeah.
Um, God damn, now I can't.
Well, we gotta find it or move on. You got what else you got for us? I think that about covers our Big 12 breakdown.
Oh
And
yeah,
by breakdown, I mean a destruction as well as our analysis of it. The Super SEC is coming for you. Anything else? You got any other? We're here. You got me. You know, a little bonus time. We've hit the hour mark, which this show doesn't do much anymore. So, pop a
well,
bottle.
my last thing on the college football thing here in a perfect world at this point, there's no going back. But I think I kind of have some like buyer's remorse sort of thing here in the sense that all of these changes, honestly, since I can't speak to the Southwest Conference breakup because when that all went down, I was only like two or three. So I can't really speak to that part.
I'm honestly
But
surprised that you don't know it, but go ahead.
well, I know it, but I just I with all the reorganization and realignment, I kind of wish this TV stuff would have, the reasons for this is TV basically, and getting your product and more homes across the country, which is why like the Big Ten added, Maryland, and I'm not even going to call them Rutgers. I call them Butgers. Um, I still hate that ad to this day, and I don't think I will never not hate that ad because they don't fucking fit in the conference.
They don't
Period.
belong. Absolutely not.
I
Yeah, it's
digress. Um,
garbage squad.
I wish we could have kept and gone back to like I'm just gonna say 2006 as a year, and kept those conferences and stuff. And honestly, I either want to see a 16 team playoff or just dump the playoff period and go back to a national championship game and just go back to how it was, because it's just, all this stuff has just ruined a lot of things for college football for me, and it hasn't made it more I don't want to say fair, but giving everybody a chance in a sense, like how it is now with the 14 playoff. The 12 team is a better step because at this point now you can get quote unquote group of 5 teams into the playoff. It needs to be 16, but I'd rather just go back to, for me, the most important game would be the Rose Bowl, because IU's never going to have a chance at a national championship anyway. So, I would like something more realistic to look back on or hope for at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, the playoffs have had that effect. They've really weakened bowl games, and people don't seem to care about them, especially the more casual or general college football fans really don't care about the bowl games as much anymore. The real diehards claim to, but I think once this is expanded to 12 and eventually 16, that will be one of the downsides. I mean, think about that. On a good year, you could have the fourth or fifth best team in the Big Ten playing in the Rose Bowl. Like it could be with 16 teams in the playoffs. Like it could be somewhat. I mean, I guess Indiana could be a shoe in one year, but will you care if there's five Big Ten teams in the playoffs? I mean, maybe, but it also I think it kind of weakens any. Or what they'll do is they'll get rid of all of that and they'll make it one of their playoff games be the Rose Bowl or something, which I think will, once you've opened it up to that many teams, I mean, even if you do it as a semifinal, it's going to lose a lot of its history because it was so long. For so long, it was mainly these two conferences with exceptions, and now it's going to get opened up. And the thing that I find funny is no matter how many teams make it into the NCAA postseason, there will always be the argument for one or two who got hosed. So I know that the thought is you give more teams a shot, it's more fair. But is the 12th best team in the country really going to make a run at a national championship? I mean, I look forward to the day when it happens. I don't think, again, the casual or general fan truly understands the gap in talent between the top 8 or 10 programs and everyone else in the country. Like, it's ridiculous how top heavy college football is.
Honestly, it's probably going to get worse in that regard now with the with players being able to make name or money off their own likeness, and I'm fine with that just because at this point players need to be paid for as much money as they make the schools. Like they need to be paid in that regard. So if a consequence of that is, things get worse in regards to, the gap of talent and teams, so be it. But, I would just, personal opinion, like to go back to having something that would matter. And at this point, with everything that's gone on, I don't think that's ever going to come back now in college sports.
Yeah, I think you're past the point of no return on that. Yeah, I can't tell you how much I miss the Big East. It was something I loved, so I can understand the yearn to go back in time. I guess for Southern historians, they'll have some history to look forward to now that they'll get some old rivalries back, but I think we should enjoy the current landscape because every time it seems to change in college football, it seems to get a little bit worse. It is unfortunate, which it's funny because we've mentioned this game a couple of times, and I think about all of the NCAA 14 dynasties you could customize, and I would do the same thing, right? It's human nature. You put, I always kept the major 5, but the small divisions would get just completely depleted, and everything would be as jam-packed as it could be in these big conferences. And you always daydreamed about what it would look like, but I never would have imagined that the Big 12 could potentially not exist anymore. So if it does, it's a sign to all of us to enjoy what we have, because soon it'll just be the Big 10 and the SEC. Actually, I don't know. The Pac-12 might be untouchable just because of the time zone gap. Like, there could just be that concept of, with that big difference, like, no, we're always going to have West Coast specific, big sporting stuff there.
Or it could be, you could have them combine. You get the big PAC and the SEAC.
And the SEAC, like, so the SAC, the big PAC and the SAC.
Southeastern Atlantic Conference and in the big Pacific Athletic Conference.
Yes, I would love it. There we go. Let's push for that. And let's just let all of the top 25 at the end of the season go into the playoffs. And then we'll get really mad about that one team that was ranked 26th. And we're like, man, they should have gotten a shot at the title because that's how football works. Yeah, I'm with you. I think football is the kind of sport where, you don't want necessarily a series or a big playoff. The NFL, I like the way it's small. There's what, like 6 teams on
Now,
each. Is it? It's 7 now. Okay, so see, this is the thing. It's people that make money off of sports understand that the bigger playoffs mean
mhm.
more games that people care about. Smaller, normally unnoticed markets are now going to have playoff money to spend because they're going to have something to celebrate. But it does ultimately, I feel like it ultimately over time will weaken the product because the playoffs will start to mean less and less because it's not necessarily a challenge to get there. So, they say it's bad for sports radio for the two talking heads to agree a lot, but I just can't disagree with you on this one. It's going to be bad. A couple of teams are going to get really hosed, and I am really rooting for just a table scraps version of the Big 12 just so we have it, and then that way you have it. Nate, you coming back to talk baseball soon? Like
Yeah,
2022? Talk about the
maybe,
Guardians.
maybe I can get you to talk about some NASCAR too.
Hey, that's the if you come on, I will talk NASCAR with you. You tell me what the thing is you want me to watch, and I'll talk about it. If it'll get you back in your expertise and your 30 different Reddit tabs. I mean, I give you some shit, but it was well researched and the stuff you're able to just rattle off memory about the Pioneer League. I mean, dude, you're the sports historian and we need you on more. So, yeah, if it means I have to watch people take a lot of left turns, I will gladly do it, and we will embrace NAS culture around here at Smoke Break Sports.
Well, hey, before we leave here, the next two races they make left and right turns
Ooh,
because
now,
they're at Watkins Glen, and then they're at Indianapolis on the road course in the infield. So
now that I can
left.
get behind. Okay, you're just going all kinds of crazy directions. Okay, I might watch that one. Well, any final words, Nate Dog? Thanks again for joining us.
I mean, I guess at this point, just wait and see how official all this stuff comes. I mean, there's enough smoke, and where there's smoke, there's fire. So I think it's all but guaranteed at this point, but we'll see. Um, I guess we'll check back in due time.
Oh yeah, we will certainly be here, whether to celebrate your correctness. Either way, there's going to be mixed emotions. We're either going to be sad that we got it wrong, or happy that we got it wrong, or sad that we got it right. It's going to be a whole thing. Probably be a couple of drinks involved,